Federal agents documented a homicide on June 5th. Official files confirm that the 55-year-old victim, Lynette Hooker, vanished from the custom sailboat Soulmate near Elbow Key within the territorial waters of the northern Bahamas. Federal law enforcement subsequently seized the ocean vessel, transporting it directly to a secure Coast Guard base in Fort Pierce, Florida, following conflicting satellite data. What investigators discovered inside the main cabin left an unresolved gap in the maritime timeline. But before that question could be answered, a digital tracking signal revealed a second, deeper contradiction. The official narrative suggests a tragic open-water accident, but the emerging forensic files indicate the public record remains fundamentally incomplete. For continuous case coverage as every development happens, subscribe to Follow the Case. To establish the foundation of this federal inquiry, we must return to the verified ground truth documented by international authorities. The victim came from Onstead, Michigan, a small village located in Lenawee County, where community life centers around a dense network of lakes. Family records indicate she was an exceptionally experienced mariner who had spent over a decade living on open water, navigating complex coastal routes alongside her spouse. The couple managed a visible online presence, documenting their retirement travels across the Sea of Abaco under a prominent social media banner. However, underlying this curated maritime lifestyle was a documented pattern of severe domestic instability. Court filings from a prior police report indicate a historical cycle of physical confrontations and separations, during which the victim would periodically seek refuge at the home of her mother, Darlene Hamlet, in Onstead, Michigan. Neighboring residents on that residential street observed the ongoing tension, noting that the relationship routinely fractured and reconstituted. The central unanswered question forcing federal intervention is how an expert swimmer and seasoned boater could vanish entirely within a sheltered, shallow bay without leaving a trace of emergency signaling. Investigators confirmed that on the evening of April 4th, the victim and her spouse departed the Abaco Inn at Hopetown in an 8-foot inflatable dinghy, heading toward their anchored yacht. That short transit across Aunt Pat's Bay represents the final verified sighting of the victim alive. The primary contradiction driving the homicide classification is that the account provided by the sole companion on the water during that initial 10-hour search window is completely irreconcilable with the physical telemetry recovered from the scene. But the evidence everyone was focused on? It wasn't the real problem. As the federal investigation expanded across international jurisdictions, the technical details of the disappearance began to experience profound structural shifts. The registered owner of the vessel on the night of April 4th stated to authorities that sudden severe weather, featuring 18-knot winds, caused the victim to tumble from the inflatable dinghy into the sea. The account maintained that the emergency engine safety lanyard was wrapped around her neck, meaning the engine immediately cut out when she entered the water, leaving the spouse stranded in darkness. According to this narrative, subsequent equipment failures occurred simultaneously. A pin on the oar snapped, preventing manual propulsion, and the wind rapidly separated the vessel from the swimming victim. Yet, local maritime records from the Sea of Abaco flatly reject this meteorological timeline. Local vessel captains operating in the identical quadrant documented that the leeward side of Elbow Key remained as calm as glass throughout that specific window. Why file detailed search coordinates that direct rescue crews to a location completely vacant of tracking data? This discrepancy forced the Royal Bahamas Police Force to take the individual into custody for additional questioning based on probable cause. Bahamian authorities held the individual for 5 full days, extracting extensive statements before reaching the maximum legal limit for detention without formal charges. Upon release, the individual publicly vowed to remain in the Bahamas to lead private recovery efforts. Yet flight manifests show he departed the country for the United States less than 24 hours later. Federal special agents subsequently tracked his return to Michigan, but his current physical location remains completely unconfirmed by neighbors or family members. Furthermore, seasoned maritime associates revealed the existence of a high-tech thermal infrared camera permanently mounted to the mast of the Soulmate. This system, valued at approximately $33,000, possessed automated self-tracking features and heat signature tracking capable of identifying a human body in total open water darkness. Investigators confirmed that the spouse never activated this technology, nor did he mention its existence to rescue teams during the critical early hours of the search. A pattern interrupt occurs when we realize that the digital trail left by the boat's navigation instruments was silently recording a completely different path. The tension underlying these technical contradictions reached a critical legal threshold when federal authorities executed search warrants on the impounded sailboat at Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Analysts focused heavily on a hidden audio file obtained by an associate, Blaine Stevenson, who had recorded a telephone conversation with the husband shortly after the disappearance. In that recording, the spouse calmly detailed how every single safety system and piece of survival gear failed in perfect, rapid succession. The false impression of a cascading accidental disaster completely shattered when forensic engineers downloaded the vessel's internal data card. What they discovered, deep within the hardware architecture, was, "Do you believe the recovery of the light pink Apple Watch on board the Soulmate proves Lynette Hooker never fell from the dinghy as claimed? Or does the defense's argument regarding an intoxicated timeline provide a credible alternative?" Federal prosecutors have submitted these electronic records directly to the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, ensuring complete chain of custody verification for the upcoming grand jury review. Moving into the deep dive of the physical evidence, forensic technicians began a systematic breakdown of the electronic assets seized from the couple's maritime estate. The most striking micro-reveal centers on the victim's personal electronic hardware. In the final photograph taken of the victim at the Abaco Inn at Hopetown, she is clearly visible wearing her standard Apple Watch, distinguished by a highly specific light pink band. The spouse's formal statement asserted that the victim fell overboard wearing her personal belongings and never returned to the primary yacht. However, when federal agents processed the interior cabin of the Soulmate at the Coast Guard facility, they recovered that identical light pink Apple Watch sitting on its designated induction charger. Her daughter, Carly Hooker, later clarified a critical behavioral habit. Her mother routinely removed the watch before evening dinners because the battery life consistently degraded by 7 o'clock. This physical recovery strongly indicates that the victim returned to the main vessel, took a shower, and placed her device on the charger prior to the escalation of whatever event took place on board. How does a secure encryption key remain active on an automated docking instrument if the operator was allegedly stranded adrift for 7 hours? To understand the gravity of this discovery, we must look at how the data intersects with a chilling voice message sent by the victim to her daughter, Carly Allsworth, at exactly 11:30 on the night of the disappearance. In that audio transmission, the victim's speech patterns indicated heavy intoxication, a state that family members confirm frequently preceded intense, volatile arguments within the marriage. The defense maintains that an intoxicated timeline accounts for any subsequent confusion or tracking errors made by the grieving spouse. Yet, the data compiled by the Coast Guard Investigative Service establishes a completely different geographical reality. Special agents successfully initiated a custody transfer of the 8-foot inflatable dinghy from Bahamian authorities to a federal forensic facility. Technicians are currently utilizing advanced light source scanning to analyze the interior surfaces for microtraces of hair, blood, or indentation patterns that would indicate a violent physical struggle within the small craft. This processing occurs simultaneously with the extraction of cellular tower handshakes from the Northern Bahamas network, tracking the exact propagation delay of that final 11:30 voice note. If the transmission originated from a coordinate deep within the bay rather than the open sea, The accidental open water drowning narrative completely dissolves. The structural core of the prosecution's nobody case relies entirely on transforming circumstantial data into an absolute mathematical certainty. Investigators spent weeks meticulously mapping the physical search quadrants against the husband's recorded claims. The case appeared to stabilize around the concept of a tragic navigation error caused by nightfall and extreme emotional distress. That stabilization completely evaporated when federal intelligence units bypassed the local logs and extracted raw satellite tracking telemetry. The data revealed that the vessel was operating miles away from the reported coordinates, in water measuring 25 feet deep. What they found inside the decrypted tracking log, the unsealed satellite telemetry, directly demonstrates that the search teams were intentionally directed to a vacant sector of the Sea of Abaco, effectively causing international rescue assets to exhaust critical hours exploring the wrong location. This technical contradiction represents the foundation of the federal homicide classification. Former federal prosecutor Julie Rendelman noted that while executing a murder prosecution without physical remains introduces immense legal hurdles, historical precedents like the Scott Peterson trial demonstrate that a tightly woven web of objective circumstantial data can secure a conviction. To further calibrate the forensic profile, special agents secured voluntary DNA swabs from 3 maternal family members, including the victim's mother, Darlene Hamlet, which have been transferred directly to Quantico, Virginia, for matching against any future maritime recoveries. The case took an unexpected procedural turn this week when a confidential source close to the family alerted investigators that the individual may have fled federal jurisdiction. Unverified tracking reports indicate the spouse may have crossed the California-Mexico border near San Diego by land, utilizing historical travel routes where identification checks are inconsistently enforced. A neighbor from Onstead, Michigan, Jordan Plint, has actively cooperated with federal agents, attempting to recover historical cloud-stored CCTV footage from her garage camera facing Darlene Hamlet's residence. This footage could definitively document the severe cycle of coercive control and physical intimidation that characterized the relationship before the couple departed for the Bahamas. If the physical movements were entirely accidental, why would an experienced navigator explicitly avoid using the primary survival instruments mounted to his own helm? The next federal procedural deadline is scheduled for June 18th, when the formal forensic laboratory updates will lock into the case file. The same technical tracking dispute appeared in the state of Massachusetts versus Walsh, where cellular data shattered a spouse's timeline. When a maritime dream is systematically dismantled by the very instruments designed to ensure its safety, it reveals a chilling reality about the lengths to which an individual will go to rewrite history. If this case matters to you, the next development is one you will not want to miss. Whether the forensic team at Quantico, Virginia, successfully extracted cloud-stored telemetry from the vessel's unactivated $33,000 thermal camera remains an open question that federal filings have not yet answered.